Hi guys.
Hi guys.
Hey folks, I'm Tina Hoy with Follow the Coin, and we are here with Jackson Palmer. Jackson, I don't really know how to introduce you this time around.
Just
Would
say he's the Dogecoin guy. That's the simplest thing to say.
Jackson was the Dogecoin guy, or once known as the founder of Dogecoin. Ooh,
Yeah.
there it is.
But now I'm just into general crypto and like I do a YouTube series about all the different kind of explaining what the blockchain is because so many people are interested in it now. So trying to help the newbies kind of get up to speed. I've always enjoyed that side of it rather than the politics of Bitcoin.
Your show, the new one, we actually have a playlist where we follow Bitcoin, and we definitely tag that as one to watch.
Hmm.
Love it, and so it's actually extremely educational and informative. It's great.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to shoot for. I'm trying to be like unbiased and just talk about the technology and the cool things that it's enabling, and then not go too much into like a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, you should do like videos where you like look into the ICOs that are happening right now and recommend your top ICOs." And I don't want to do that. Because I think it would be like playing favorites. I'd rather just talk about the underlying technology. If there's cool technology, I'll talk about it. But yeah, otherwise, I don't want to turn into one of these. A lot of YouTubers, you go on and it's like a 2 hour like Google Hangout where people are just like talking about their ICOs and stuff, and I just don't want to become
Is this okay? Well, I'm gonna try to not ask you questions such as which ICOs do you like best at the moment.
that. I don't know. I actually I think ICOs like have some legitimate cases where they're potentially raising money for a startup that's doing something that in today's kind of world, because blockchain is still very new, those people can't raise kind of classic venture capital. Because like I think what's happened is like back in the day, right? Like back in the day, like 3 years ago when I was doing Dogecoin and everything, and we used to do these hangouts all the time. Back then, like Bitcoin and blockchain was kind of like the hot thing in like Silicon Valley and like traditional venture capital. But I feel like some people got burnt by that when the price went down. And like the new hot thing I feel in Bitcoin is not in Bitcoin, in venture capital is like, augmented reality and like Internet of Things. Like that's the new shiny object. And so like traditional venture capital isn't like pumping all this money into Bitcoin like it used to. And so I think ICOs like or token sales, whatever you want to call them, do have like have some kind of like utility there in enabling these kind of cutting edge technologies, like bootstrapping them with funds. But I think a lot of them, like the ones that are raising like hundreds of millions of dollars, are just kind of taking it to like some ridiculous level. And you should just raise what you need to kind of like build cool stuff. And some of them are building really cool stuff. So uh, basically, the ones that have technology that's already kind of semi-usable today, they're the ones that I'd recommend. The ones that are kind of like, hey, I'm doing an ICO for something that's not even related to blockchain technology, I don't really get it.
Well, and then that brings me to the question of the hour. Well, two questions of the hour, which is the SEC regulations. I mean, they've just been announced.
Hmm.
They're kind of interesting. I feel like anybody who's kind of been running an exchange is probably re-strategizing how to be compliant. But
Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny because it's like they're not really regulating, right? Like they're giving guidance, and so they still haven't like made it very clear. And so the notice that they gave was specifically around the DAO, the DAO that got hacked, and
it was a nightmare. Yeah.
yeah, and it was a nightmare. And from the beginning, like it was very clear that the way that was set up was for its users to profit. And there's no like everybody. I don't think it was a big surprise to anybody that's been in the space for a while. They're like that thing is with security. Like you can dress it up as much as you want, but it was a security, and it got hacked. And so the SEC, I think we're just saying, yep, like this is probably like our prime example of what not to do.
Mhm.
Um, and then basically, they were saying just be careful. Like when you're thinking about doing these ICOs, make sure that it's what you're doing. Like if it is a security, great, but go and like register it as a security and only take money from accredited investors. Otherwise, if you're doing something that could be classified as crowdfunding, or if you're doing something that could be classified as selling a product that's redeemable for a service, like selling tokens or whatever, then fine. Like that's okay as well. I think you just have to have a very strong legal standpoint and not blatantly go around. Like a lot of these companies, like they're doing ICOs now, you go in their Slack channels and they're like, oh, if you buy this thing, it's going to go like 10 times up in price. And as soon as you're doing that, you're implicating yourself. It's just a really, really stupid thing to do. And so um, that's really all the SEC is saying. The exchange thing is really interesting though, because the exchanges, right? These exchanges have been selling like DAO tokens, and they've been selling like all sorts of tokens for a long time. And it's interesting because it puts the onus on the exchange to kind of gauge how much risk they're willing to take. Because every time they add one of these things, they got to say like, does it like they need to kind of develop a test almost to say, okay, does it check this box or this box or this box? Then it might be a security. And there's this thing called the Howey test, right, which is what's used by the SEC in determining, whether something is a security or not. But it doesn't really directly apply to ICOs. So I think somebody like probably in the space should come up with like a best practices kind of like, if you're doing this, then you might be a security. If like, I don't know, best practices are something the industry needs. So hopefully with the SEC's guidance, yeah. What do you say?
Is that going to be your next video?
No, I'm not a lawyer.
This is why actually we're going to pause for a half second. I did make a call out for a bunch of folks, at least on our Facebook. We are looking for lawyers who are very well versed in, this sort of like SEC regulatory vagueness that
Yeah.
it's really quite too hard for us to figure out what's going on. And so if there are lawyers out there in the crypto space, or you're just familiar with it or interested in the space and willing to come and speak on a panel and also on a video format and, kind of maybe even be on a webinar with us, please let us know.
That'd be awesome.
We have all these questions for you.
Yeah. I think it's hard, right? Because like we should preface all this. This is not legal advice because like we can't give legal advice. And I think it's tough for lawyers as well, right? Because they don't have a lot to work with, and so they're also kind of going forward with a strong opinion, but it's not necessarily like they have no way of knowing that would be very interesting. A panel with actual lawyers on this kind of thing, I'd love to kind of see.
See, I'm really trying to find them. So
yeah.
The lawyer hunt is on.
You got to get them come out of the woodwork, and that would be awesome.
I think it's interesting because I have only been referred to certain people, but I haven't really. It just dawned on me yesterday. I'm like, I just want to keep people safe. And I think for those people who might be new to you or I, being in the space, because we're kind of coming back from retirement now.
We've been through all the battles. We've seen wars in Bitcoin before. I think it's like one of those things where when I started to see, so I have the exact same opinion. When I started to see, the price going up and like heaps of people on Twitter that I follow that weren't into Bitcoin previously being like, hey, you should go and buy Bitcoin or you should go and buy Ethereum. I started to worry because I was like, oh no, this has like all the same kind of hallmarks of before, right? Where people are like getting their friends and family in. These people aren't necessarily like Bitcoin savvy. And they can make stupid decisions. Like undoubtedly, I'm sure a lot of people like were convinced by their friends and family or their coworkers to buy Ethereum when it was like $390 or something, right? And now it's half that price. So I think any kind of educational thing that brings in people that aren't like in the space is useful, because then that kind of awareness, like if you can build that awareness, then it'll go viral and people will talk to other people when they hear, oh, I'm thinking of investing in an ICO. If somebody can say, wait a second, you should think about this first, that would be a good outcome.
Right. I completely agree. I think, a lot of people started calling me and still call, and they're like, so we want you to get involved with this ICO or like build this and that. I'm like, are we completely compliant? There's legal people there to like guide you, because it's actually, you shouldn't go joining a venture with people you haven't really done due diligence on. We have to stress that. I think, how do we? Well, so we both went out of the Bitcoin industry for quite some time. I think a year and a half.
About a year and a half, yeah, if not a little bit more, yeah.
Sabbatical of sorts.
That's a good way of putting it.
Minor pause. And I think it is interesting because why is it, Jackson? I have a question. Why? It's just for me. It's a general feeling. It feels like people who kind of get involved in Bitcoin become slightly obsessed. And so, why do you think that phenomenon happens?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's I think it's a combination of two things. I think it's a combination um, of the technology being, very hard to understand for even people that are relatively tech savvy, and the money making side of it. And so I think like the people that I know over the years that have kind of remained really grounded and like realistic in all of this are the people who have like PhDs in like mathematics or computer science, have written papers on this stuff before, because their passion lies purely in the technology, right? And they can geek out about this stuff and they enjoy that, but um, they're not kind of addicted to it, if you will. Like they're addicted to the technology and the passion bit, but that was a field they were in previously, right? They were previously in the computer science field. They were previously in the cryptography field, right? So they don't let it get away from them. I think the problem is that when you conflate that with money making and people that, you know, are dangerous enough to be able to explain Bitcoin, but then also in the same breath will say, and I made $1,000 off it. It becomes kind of this like multi-level marketing kind of scheme. It does, where people
I
know,
just
know
went there.
yeah, people know, and like it's like Ethereum, right? People know enough to be able to explain Ethereum as like this worldwide supercomputer, right? And then they say, and I like made 100x on my investment in like a year. Um, like that's like straight out of the playbook of multi-level marketing, right? But the people that are into Ethereum, they don't realize that. They don't realize they're doing it. Like their intentions are not bad, but because they've conflated awesome technology with money,
In
we
hype.
now have this thing where like the incentives are all misaligned, and this person is going to get addicted to the fact they can make money off this thing. So kind of comes this like cult like kind of community where people are just kind of blindly following it because it's made them money, and that's why I think it's really important that people that have made money off it like go out of their way to better educate themselves about the technology, and also like to kind of have a healthy dose of skepticism. I think skepticism is sorely missing in the industry, and the people that have PhDs, they got PhDs because they're skeptical and you know, they go through and they are meticulous in looking into the details, and that's we need more of that.
Right. I completely agree. I hate that I mean, I feel bad. Sometimes people are very enthusiastic, and I've said, the same thing that we said the first time around, which is, just if you're sitting there watching the price all day long,
Mhm.
it's probably not the healthiest way to even approach the blockchain or Bitcoin.
Well, yeah, and it's I think the thing is, it becomes an addiction. I think it becomes something where and especially the run up we've had this year, right? Like with Bitcoin and like altcoins, they were moving at kind of a relatively slow pace compared to what ICOs are doing now, and because of that, the addiction aspect wasn't as crazy as it is now. But with ICOs, because there's a new one coming on every week, it's kind of like I got to get my fix. I got to get my fix. I got to get in on the next ICO because then that'll go up in price. And people get addicted to that whole thing because they see it as like a money making ploy. And what's sad is that often the technology gets forgotten, right? It basically, because you've conflated the two, it becomes less about the technology and more about the money.
Right.
And that's the sad kind of state of where things have gone. And it's exactly the same. It's probably a good segue into the Bitcoin fork.
Yes.
It's the exact same thing that's going on with Bitcoin Cash. Is
Please
great.
dive right on in and tell everybody what the heck is going on. What's the difference between BTC and BTC now? It's
Yeah,
all just,
yeah.
of course.
Okay. Quick timeline of events. So, um, as we all know, or as most people should know, Bitcoin's had this scaling issue, right? And it can't process enough transactions in a block, and a block is only 1 megabyte. And so for a lot of time, the miners were arguing, and a lot of people were arguing actually that okay, the solution is we'll just make the block bigger than 1 megabyte, right? Make it 2 megabytes or 8 megabytes or whatever, and we can fit more in it. But some people on the Bitcoin core team said, no, that's not a scalable solution because you could just end up expanding to ridiculous block sizes, right? We need to actually reduce the size of transactions somehow. And so this thing called segregated witness was created. And basically all the segregated means in that is that you're removing, you can leave out a chunk of the transaction in the block. So it's just the vital information that's there. And so this reduces the block size. And so this was proposed, but like ages ago, like a year ago. And but it would only ever activate if like 95% of the mining community started supporting it. And so flash forward like 6 months, and there was no support from the mining community. And so what happened was something, basically users were saying, we need this, our transactions are taking way too long, they're too slow, they're costing a lot in transaction fees. And so this idea of something called a user activated soft fork came up, UASF, or BIP 148, which is Bitcoin Improvement Protocol 148, proposal 148. And this was basically saying, you know what, we're going to allow on August 1st, the users, the nodes, not the miners, to activate segregated witness. And this kind of like made the miners all like stand back and say, oh my gosh, like this could be terrible. We're going to lose control over this network, which we've held forever, right? Miners decide the protocol basically with their hash power. And so I think, UASF put miners on alert, and then they came together and they agreed on something called SegWit 2x. And SegWit 2x was signed in a New York agreement like a few months back. And basically it does segregated witness on or before August 1st. And then it doubles the block size to 2 megabytes later in the year, like November or something. So this came up, but the problem was that UASF, the code for UASF and the code for SegWit 2x were not compatible until somebody created something called BIP 91. And it basically made it compatible as long as enough people were signaling before August. And so like, a week or two ago, BIP 91 activated, and we were all like, yes, this is awesome. Like, great, segregated witness is locked in. We're going to get it. UASF won't even activate because segregated witness will already be signaled. Wahoo, awesome. Bitcoin scales, great. We won't have to think about that until SegWit 2x in November, right? When they want to do the block size double. Everybody thought everything was cool until like a week or two ago, when the phrase Bitcoin Cash started getting thrown around. And this comes from a blog post that Bitmain, which is one of the big mining companies out of China, had written about something called a user-activated hard fork. And at the time, everybody thought this was just Bitmain kind of like flexing their muscles and trying to show the users that, no, we run the network, political stuff like that. But their proposal was basically saying that, look, if segregated witness or UASF activates, right, on August 1st, then we're going to splinter off and create a hard fork of the network that doesn't have SegWit, because we don't like SegWit. Some people in the mining community don't like SegWit. They want bigger blocks. And so what's happened is in the last week or two, the code has emerged. We've come up with a date and a time when this will fork. And one of the side effects of this thing forking is that you end up with basically 2 Bitcoins, right, running in parallel. And a lot of exchanges have said, we're actually going to support both. Now, the problem with that is that, well, it's not really a problem, but what it means is that users that have money on the Bitcoin network can then redeem their Bitcoin for Bitcoin Cash on the other network, right? So if I have 1 Bitcoin on the regular Bitcoin network, as of like tomorrow, I'm going to be able to redeem a Bitcoin on the Bitcoin Cash network. And everybody was saying, well, this is no different to an altcoin, right? You may as well call it whatever coin. Bitcoin Cash is just an altcoin. But the problem is that because there's this issuance system where I can redeem it on the other network, people started getting greedy. And so a lot of people who were like, oh yeah, user accepted soft fork, like, segregated witness is awesome. They're going to go ahead and they're still going to redeem their Bitcoin Cash because they know they can sell it. So on certain exchanges, they're selling Bitcoin Cash futures right now for like $400. And so people are like, it's free money. Yeah, awesome. So we're inadvertently, as a community, supporting Bitcoin Cash through our own greed, right? Like if everybody was like, you know what, I'm not going to redeem the thing is worthless, it's actually an altcoin, and they forgot about it, well then it probably wouldn't have anywhere near as much traction as it does right now. because think about it. Why would exchanges list Bitcoin Cash? Because they're going to make money off it, off transaction fees. If every user says, you know what, no, we don't believe in Bitcoin Cash, we're going to boycott it, then the exchanges would have no motivation to list it because there's going to be very few transactions to get fees on. So by the Bitcoin community saying, in one breath saying, oh yeah, we love segregated witness, this is awesome, this is the future, but then in the other breath saying, but we're also going to, redeem this altcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and basically cash it out on an exchange, they're inadvertently supporting the future of Bitcoin Cash and making this fork happen. So in a nutshell, in about 12 hours from today, so it's the afternoon here, but it's about midnight right now, UTC. At about 12 p.m., so about midday on August 1st, the UAHF or Bitcoin Cash, whatever you want to call it, is going to activate. And at that point, things will start forking. And when a fork like that happens, the network is going to take longer to process blocks. We're going to see also around noon Pacific time tomorrow, or no, actually tomorrow morning. Gosh, it'll be early tomorrow morning, but noon UTC, we're going to see craziness on the Bitcoin network. Like things are going to be slowing down and blocks reorganizing and all sorts of issues.
It wouldn't be a very great day of trading either, because the price is going to go all over the crazy place.
It'll go all over the place. And the other thing is most smart exchanges have, like Coinbase, have locked transactions during that period because there's all sorts of, Bitcoin Cash has this thing called replay protection, which makes it so that your transactions on one chain can't be replayed on another one, and you can be have your money, sent somewhere. But basically, because of all the block reorganizations that are going to be happening with all the craziness, the smart exchanges have basically said, you know what, either side of August 1st, we're not going to let you send or receive. Well, you'll receive, but no sending Bitcoin to anybody, which I think is a very smart move because we have no idea what's going to happen, where the hash rate's going to go. A lot of miners are playing their cards close to their chest right now about whether they're actually going to mine on Bitcoin Cash. And it'll be interesting to see whether that happens.
With the difficulty and hash rates, will there be a significant difference or similarity?
It depends. It really depends, right? So basically right now we've just got one kind of homogeneous blob of 100% of the hash rate, right? And tomorrow we will see, how does that break apart? Does 80% go to the legacy Bitcoin and 20% to Bitcoin Cash, or is there a split? And I think that distribution will obviously determine the difficulty, but it'll also determine the price. So I think we've seen this with things like Ethereum Classic. We've seen it with Z Classic, which is the Zcash Classic port. I think what will end up happening is that they will, the hash rate will distribute, and that will in some way determine the price.
It's going to be an interesting couple of days.
It is, and everybody, everybody's kind of saying right now, look at the price of Bitcoin because it's $2,900 right now. But the reason that is because everybody's been frantically pulling their money off exchanges, right? So the supply goes down, and then a few passionate, people think that they're going to play the system are buying up Bitcoin because they want to try and redeem it on the other Bitcoin Cash network. So supply and demand just throws the price up. But, tomorrow I think we're going to see a huge drop in the Bitcoin price because at the moment it's severely inflated by how much is available on exchanges. Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited that you agreed to come out of the woodwork and be on the show again.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to be coming back into the space and then all of this madness happening. Although I can't say I didn't expect it. It's this community is a little bit prone to drama. Dogecoin, it's simple. We have none of this drama. We haven't pushed a code update in Dogecoin for since 2015. Everything's running smoothly. Everybody should just use that,
Well, it's kind of prone to drama is putting it lightly, I think, and it's kind of funny, it's actually kind of nice to actually be here talking in a different way from last time, and it's good to be in touch again, and back at it. We got dragged back too, so it's not it was a pretty big push from quite a few people that are no, I think Follow needs to cover Bitcoin again.
It's good. It's a good move, I think. I think, it's definitely heating up in the space, and I think there's more things than just Bitcoin now. There's Ethereum. There's all sorts of other cool tech that you could cover that are being used for things other than just payments. So
Which one are the ones that you are kind of following and excited about?
yeah, I think there's a few. It's like, what can I talk about? Because some of these startups probably don't want me giving away their amazing ideas.
Right.
Um, I think something that's very interesting is the notion of um, mesh networks and facilitating, like, and it actually taps into this whole Internet of Things kind of thing, right? Where you have every device is kind of connected to the internet in some way. And I think what's interesting is that those devices, in order to communicate with one another, if there's going to be like a mesh network in the future, also have to have a way of essentially paying each other for kind of like the way they hop between the devices, right? Like if I want to send data from like my phone to, you know, a person's phone that's like 3 blocks away, but there's like hops that I can follow to get there over like a mesh network. There needs to be a payment protocol there to kind of like encourage people to allow me to use their bandwidth. And
Mm.
so I think technologies that are looking into how you can combine like the Internet of Things and mesh networking with digital cash is really interesting. But to get there, you need to have microtransactions. And so that's something that, you know, even Ethereum today, every transaction costs around 20 cents in gas. So we need to have like payment channels or something like the Lightning Network and things like this to facilitate these kind of multi-hop, like essentially transaction fee free ways, like microtransactions of like 1 to 5 cents kind of thing.
Right. No, that's fascinating. I mean, I've definitely have a few proposals also. We're kind of doing some consulting, some
Oh, nice.
mentoring and incubation here or there, not just of Bitcoin companies, just to give some people some catch up, since we haven't really actually formally done that. I should, I owe everybody a video explanation
Yeah,
of
video explainer of what you've been doing the last couple of years.
what I'm doing now. Well, so we have expanded our scope to meaningful innovation overall, anything that's impacting humans, hopefully in a positive way.
Mm,
Kind of more of an educational show.
hmm.
We're trying to just keep people informed and safe, and we're still having that layer of trust and due diligence in everything that we do, and becoming sort of an innovation lab. So, with Jackson and I were talking, so hopefully we get to collaborate a lot more now. So that'll be fun as well.
Yeah, I think I honestly think we're at a point now where some of this cryptocurrency technology can start merging with traditional technology. I think when it all kind of like hit the mainstream a couple of years back, it wasn't ready for the prime time, and I think now there's more bridges into like so where a regular like JavaScript developer that's done web their entire life can jump in and start kind of playing around. I just think the tooling wasn't there before, and we're starting to get to a point where it is. Um, but I think that the important thing is that I think a lot of companies like basically if people are wondering what my favorite ICOs are, I'm not going to tell you what they are, but here's my like kind of rule book. Like it's a very simple rule to determine like whether you should even think about like looking at an ICO or not. And the rule is, does the thing that you're trying to do on the blockchain have an existing marketplace where people are trading, B2C or B2B or C2C, like peer-to-peer trades, right? If that marketplace already exists, then amazing, right? Because the blockchain basically facilitates that.
Right.
If that marketplace doesn't exist today in a centralized world, then you're going to have a very, very hard time moving it to going. Basically, you're starting off with a product idea that hasn't even kind of got a website or a current centralized implementation. So taking that all the way to the other end of the spectrum and having a decentralized peer-to-peer network around it doesn't necessarily make sense. I think look at proven markets. Whether it's like trading like collectible cards or things like that, and then move that into the blockchain instead of trying to shoehorn every other idea into the blockchain.
Or, well, I guess another way to look at it is sort of like if it's coming out of the ether, it's probably not so great to trust, because one
Yeah.
thing I mean, it makes sense because all innovative, I guess, industries will make up their own terminology, but you shouldn't be making everything up.
No, no, it's crazy. Like I heard of one recently where somebody wanted to do an ICO for a coffee machine, and I'm like what? Like there isn't a marketplace today. There isn't like a there isn't even a centralized marketplace or token system or trade system for coffee machines. Like what? Why would you want to do an ICO? And so it's that kind of thing.
Beans makes more sense.
Yeah, maybe like a coffee bean sharing website or something like that. But like, you know what? If that doesn't exist today, go and build it on like a centralized. Go and build it on Amazon Web Services. Like, see if you can make any money on it and whether people want to use it for about a year, and then think about blockchain. But just don't go all the way, right? Like, I think the blockchain is really useful in decentralizing and reducing friction and cost of traditional marketplaces, right? So whether that's like ticketing, collectibles, anything today where I'm trading something with you, like point of sale commerce, then the blockchain could potentially make that more frictionless. But something that has no current market, it's just stupid.
It's yeah. So that's at least good advice for people. I'm trying really hard. Sometimes people ask me how I see the ICO world at the moment, and I said, well, I think blockchain technologies are going to be very interesting in the future and how they get implemented with smart contracts and
Hmm.
people dice up equity that way as well.
Hmm.
When
Yeah.
people talk about Bitcoin price, I'm like, well, think of it maybe like a casino or foreign exchange trading where it's high volatility stocks.
Yeah, that stuff works. Like I think I'm still very skeptical of like people keeping large amounts of money in this stuff, to be honest. Like I think um, one of the things that happens when you put a lot of money in a and you basically lock it up with computer code, right, i.e. smart contracts, is you basically paint a big target on that smart contract and you say, hey, hackers, go and find a bug in this thing because we just raised $100 million and you could get it, right? And this is exactly what happened with something like there was recently a multi-sig wallet bug in this software called Parity. And it's basically because you got millions and millions of dollars locked away in this stuff. I think the industry needs to kind of take baby steps and write smart contracts that are only like storing like a maximum of like $10 worth or $100 worth, right? So that people get hacked, they don't necessarily care.
Right.
Because like a lot of these ICOs, like, oh my gosh, if was one of these people that just ran a $300 million ICO, I'd be like hiring a security team and like I would be freaking out because like I've just like basically painted a target on myself and the code that we wrote as well. Like if you have contract code, like you can look at even the most reliable like cryptographic software out there, like OpenSSL, right? And remember a few years ago, there was that big Heartbleed bug that came out and everybody was freaking out about it. That software had been like reviewed. It was open source, been reviewed for years by security researchers, and this bug wasn't discovered. And so like the fact that, so now we have these fresh smart contracts, which have existed for less than a year, like in 10 years, there's going to be all sorts of holes like poked in those things. So I wouldn't lock up a lot of money, at least with something like Bitcoin, because there's very limited scripting available. It's harder to find bugs. Basically, you're reducing the attack vectors.
Right. Or yeah, I think what's interesting is people are not looking at the code often enough
Yeah.
times. And
They're
so
looking at like the current price and how much they can make, and that's how it works. Sadly, like yeah.
if you looked under the hood at the code and then you see there's all these vulnerabilities or bugs or just strange pathways that don't make any sense.
Exactly. Yeah, I recommend anybody that's thinking of investing in any ICO or any token sale to find their most technical friend and have them look at the code.
Yes.
Or if you don't, like, email me, like, do something, like, talk to somebody who knows what they're doing and have them look at the code and tell them and get them to tell you, like, does everything look above board? Yeah.
Well, what is your email address, or should
Oh,
we?
you can find it online. It's not hard.
Yeah, I guess that's gonna be the thing. If you can find his email address, you can.
Oh yeah, I am really bad at hiding it. I don't hide it.
I don't hide mine either. So I guess if you really wanted a technical friend, I could point you to some people as well. So Lucky us, we have technical people around. So
We do.
I'm really glad you came on the show. I think
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. I hope we can do this more in the future now that we're both back in the crypto space.
I don't know how it happened, but here we are with our inaugural first return
I
being
like
do this again.
it. Okay, cool.
It's important we'll get a bunch of people that are, we've known for a long time, and also some new people that, just are basically solid good people also trying to do good things. So,
There's a lot of like smart brains and good people in the space. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing more of this.
but also be careful of the 50 ones.
Watch out. Yeah.
There's plenty. Well, thank you. And I guess
Absolutely.
bye guys again.
Happy Forking Day.
Yikes. Well, Jackson, you're like, happy working day. Bye guys.
Bye, guys.